Hello, this is Mr. Richards, and this is your line packet guide. So on the first page here, you're supposed to define these terms in your own words. So for this to be effective, I need you to define them in your own words. So I don't want you to look them up and copy the definitions. I want you to define them using your own words. I'm not going to do that because it would defeat the purpose of the exercise. So we'll move on to exercise number 2. On this one, you're supposed to draw different types of lines. For the first one, we draw thick lines. You can do this by kind of going back and forth over your line to thicken it up. You may have to do that depending on the material. Here I'm using the side of the pencil to make a thicker mark. And I'm also going to use a marker here, because that'll make a nice thick mark as well. So experiment with making different types of thick lines and try a variety of different ways to make them. So the next one we're going to be doing is thin lines down below. So same idea, I use my pencil for this. You could also use the marker and just try to draw with the tip. I just want to keep the lines real thin. So I'm going to do a variety. I'll do a straight one. It's kind of straight dark, but still thin. This is lighter and thin. And then just some like thin, curvy lines. Now next we need to draw light lines. I'm going to draw some light, curvy lines. I'm going to use the side of my pencil, try to draw lightly, see how lightly I can draw while still making a mark. And here I hold it angled, but when I move certain ways, it makes a different stroke than others, so I get a holographic line. These next ones are dark. First one I'm going with the side of my pencil as dark as I can, and then using the tip, and then going over a couple times to darken it. Quick, I just want to make my lines as quickly as I can. And then slow, do kind of the same type of lines, just slow down my pace a little bit. Here again, I'm using the side of my pencil at an angle to make sort of a more holographic line. So for the next prompt, I'm going to be drawing my shoe using bold, thick lines for the outline and thin lines for the interior contour lines. I'd encourage you to take off your shoe and to draw from it as a reference. So I'm going to start by sketching it out. So I'll go in and I'll just do some kind of searching, planning lines, mapping the shape of this shoe. I'm wearing some Vans, some slip-on Vans. So here's the tongue, kind of the toe I started with. Now going back towards the back of it. So feel free to kind of sketch out what you're drawing first. It's usually kind of good practice and a good way to start. That way you can make corrections. You're not committed to what you do. Most people who are experienced drawers do it this way. There's some people who are able to lay down a drawing perfectly without doing this, but most of us are not super great at that. So it's beneficial to kind of do a little planning sketch. So now I'm going in and I'm using the bold, thick line for the outline. So I'm just going to do anywhere where the edge of my shoe here is touching the background. So I can try to get this all in one stroke, or I can go back and go over the lines again to darken them. Alternatively, I could also use a marker or a different instrument for this. That would be a great idea. But I'm showing you how to do it just with a pencil for this one. So that might necessitate some going over the lines again. For the bottom here, I'm going to use kind of the side of my pencil to thicken up the line, give it almost like a feeling of a little bit of a cast shadow underneath it. And you should feel free to like play around with different ideas and experiment with things. Kind of messed up my line there, so I'm erasing. That's an important part of the process as well. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to use thin lines for my interior contours. So as I do these interior contours, I get to make artistic decisions about what I want to include and what edges I want to focus on. I can also kind of make corrections to my sketch. And you'll see me, I'll erase some of the lines of the sketch that I feel like are a little inaccurate. So that's one of the other benefits of sketching it out first. And that's also kind of why you want to keep your sketch light. You especially want to try not to really press into the paper, because as you draw, if you're applying a lot of pressure, you're going to dig like a little furrow or trench into the paper, and it can be really hard to erase out of those. And even if you erase it cleanly, you can sometimes see where the paper was squished and pushed down in the finished art. And this is maybe less of a factor in this printed packet, but when you start using drawing paper or papers that are maybe a little bit softer or thicker, those indentations can be a really real problem. Now I'm adding in some of the stitching here. And I don't necessarily need to do that part, but you can add anything that interests you. So I'm trying to get through this packet at a reasonable pace. So I'm doing what I would mark as maybe like low A grade work. If you want to get an A+, I really need to see something either really exemplary in comparison to the rest of the class, or something that I feel is like a real improvement for you. Now I'm moving on to the holographic lines. You need to write your name in holographic line. So I'm just using the marker with a brush tip, and I'm holding it at an angle. And what that does is it makes a different thickness of line depending on which direction my stroke's going. Just kind of a basic idea in calligraphy. So I should end up with a holographic line. If I am not seeing obvious change to thickness, I can go back in and thicken some areas of the line. That's totally allowed. I could alternatively do the same thing with my pencil by holding it at an angle like this. And then as it goes kind of along that angle, or perpendicular to the angle I'm holding it, it makes a thick line. And when it goes like towards my finger, it makes a thinner line. Alright, so for this section we're going to be shading using hatching and cross-hatching on the first two. And then on the bottom entry here we're not going to be shading, we're just drawing contour lines. So let's imagine the light coming straight down from above for this first one. It's going to be hitting the surface of the sphere here and bouncing off. It's going to be hitting here and bouncing off at an angle. But on the sides, on the bottom, the light's not going to be hitting it. So I'm going to draw a blue line around here. All the stuff I'm drawing in blue you don't need to draw. I'm just kind of using it to explain. But that's what's called the terminator line, and that's the border between the shadow area and the light area. So underneath that line, I'm going to just use hatching to shade the bottom of the sphere here, like this. And then there's going to be a gradual transition between the terminator line into the light area. So I'm going to lightly hatch that belt that runs across. And I'm trying to kind of press my pencil down and then pull up as I make my hatch marks to make it kind of a gradual transition. So for the cylinder here, we've got the light coming down on it from above. So this top area, this top circle is going to be light. I'm not going to shade that at all. But then on the sides, the light's going to miss it. So I'm going to shade all of that. And it's going to be a similar kind of situation for the cube here. So we're going to have the light coming down from above. The top of the cube is going to be light. And then on the sides, it's going to be shaded. So I'll use my hatching marks here. For the next one, I'll hatch that side too. For the next one, we're going to make the lighting situation a little more complicated. We're going to work with some diagonal lighting coming in from above and to the left. It's the same type of idea, except now our terminator line is going to be kind of facing diagonally like this. So I'll shade in the bottom right. And then on the cylinder here, since it's coming from the side, we're going to have the left side of the cylinder lit up. The right side's going to be in shadow. And then this will all be in shadow because the light's going to be moving past it since it's coming from the left side. So now I'll shade in the sphere on the shadow area with my hatching and then cross hatching. And I over hatched, so I'm going to clean up with my eraser. And then I'll shade in this transition. I want to shade it lighter than the shadow area. I want to try to make it fade gradually if I can. Something like that. Now on this side, I'm going to shade in all of this side on the cylinder. And then I'll come back and make my cross hatching. And then same thing, since this is a curved surface, we want a gradual transition here. So we want to kind of gradually fade our cross hatching out. Now on this one, again the light's going to be moving past it, so I'm just going to shade this whole area. You can see the light beams are going to miss that side entirely. They're going to go right past. So I'll just shade in that area entirely, and then go the other way to crosshatch. The back side there can be shaded too. Hatching, and then crosshatching. So for the bottom one here, I'll clean that up. For the bottom one, we're just going to be drawing cross contours. So we shade here, no shade there. Just cross contours, no shade. All right. So to draw the cross contours, we just want to have some foreshortened circles curving across the sphere like this. It's a little messed up, that's okay. And then for this one, I want to have curved lines that match the top or the bottom here. Like this. And then for the cube, it's a little confusing because it's super simple. You just go straight across here. So just match up your lines with the edge. Here we can go straight across on a diagonal since it looks like it's diagonal. It's moving away. And same thing here. We can go either this way horizontal or we can do diagonal there. Okay, for this next entry we're going to be doing a holographic line around the outline or the contours of our animal. And we're going to define the form using cross contours. So I'm just going to start by sketching out my animal here. I'm going to draw a dinosaur. So I'm just kind of lightly using my pencil and sketching just to plan things out. So you're welcome to do this for sure. But I'm just trying to lay things out and get them where I want them. That neck's a little too thick there, so I'm correcting that. I'm sketching lightly and just trying to get the layout that I'm looking for. So I want holographic line for the contours, and then cross contour lines. So I'm going to use a marker with a brush tip for my holographic line. And if I apply very gentle pressure, I can make the line thin. And then if I apply more pressure, I can thicken it up. So I can kind of just make my own choices about where I want the line to be thick or thin. I could also potentially try to thicken it up in areas that are going to be in shadow. That's a good way to use line quality to show a little bit about kind of how the light's hitting an object. But really, I'm just looking for some variation in the thickness of the line. However you accomplish that is fine. So I'm mostly just going to stick to the outline here. I'll do some contours for its eye and its mouth. I like that tail to be a little thinner, but that's alright. I'll add an eye and a mouth. You can add whatever sort of interior contours you need. And then I'm going to come back in with my colored pencil. I'm going to do some cross contours going across the body. So I just want to think about the curvature of each part of it. So I'm going to have like a kind of rounded tail here. So I'm going to make curved lines wrapping around that tail. And sort of same idea on the legs and the body and the neck. All right, there we go. Done. Okay, so for item number 9, we're going to be drawing an animal using thick, dark lines for the outline, and then thinner, lighter lines for its interior contours. So I'm going to start off by sketching my animal here. I'm going to draw a cat. So I'm going to start off by sketching that out, kind of using some sketching lines, some searching lines, experimenting with shapes, trying to figure out the layout and how much of the space I want it to take up. I want to sketch lightly, and then I'll come back in and correct it and make details in my contour lines. So now I'm going to come in and darken my outline, but I'm going to use the marker for it instead of the pencil. If you want to do the pencil, you could do the whole thing with that, just like I did my shoe. But I think the marker works really well for this because it'll give me a big, bold, thick line. It'll hopefully like set my cat out from the background a little bit. So just kind of draw all the way around there, and then I'll do my interior contours with a blue colored pencil. So now I'm going to switch to my blue colored pencil. I'm going to sketch in the interior contours of my cat drawing here. So I'll just kind of work my way around. I want to kind of follow my sketch, but I can also add details and kind of nuance and make the lines a little more complex. So I want to kind of define them more clearly, but also maybe make them a little more complex and play around with the kind of feel of each of the lines. Alright, so I've added all my interior contours. Now I'm going to add a mouse just for fun. So that's the basic idea. That's the walkthrough on the packet. I would call what I've done here like kind of A- work. I'm kind of speeding through to keep this video short and succinct as possible. But if you're looking for a full credit A+, a little more effort on these, a little longer, a little more attention to detail. I want to see something that really wows me. And that's it. Thank you. So this concludes your line packet. You are done. Ta-da. Ta-da.